Oh, hey, I didn't see you there. It's me, Iron Man. Okay, well, that was stupid. Hey guys, Colin the Big Yoshi here, and today we're going to be talking about Iron Man 3, the first film of Marvel's Phase 2. Hey, so, this movie came out in 2013, and it's a very mixed movie again, I think, and people like it for the most part, but there's one thing about it that they really don't like, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but yeah, I just want to say I think I'm a little biased. I love this movie. I've seen this movie a million times. Like, something like that, you know. Yeah, I just really love this movie. This is definitely my favorite out of the Iron Man movies. So the story of this movie is that Tony, back in 1999, at a expo, he kind of pissed off this guy named Aldrich Killian, and that guy had a company called AIM. And AIM then started experimenting on people to make this concept called extremis work. And it basically let people regrow their lost limbs. But unfortunately, it also makes them blow up, and once Killian knows about this, he decides to make them seem like the bombings seem like they're on purpose, and he makes a stage name called the Mandarin, and he hires a guy to go act as the Mandarin, and basically pretend to be a terrorist, and Tony needs to go stop them. But unfortunately, Tony has PTSD, and he has a bunch of anxiety attacks throughout the movie because of the trauma that he endured in the Avengers. If you guys remember, in Avengers, in the end of the movie, Tony has to fly into a wormhole so that he can defeat all of the aliens, and he knows that Thanos is coming. So, yeah, he's just kind of... he just has a lot of anxiety in this movie. Now, I wrote a lot down about this movie because I just think this movie is so good, and it's very underrated in my opinion. The thing that I like about this movie the most, I think, is that the guy who made this movie, Shane Black, he has pretty good writing for Tony Stark, and it fits his personality perfectly. Like, Tony, this is the movie that I think of when I think of Tony Stark, because the writing is just perfect for him. So Tony's definitely at his funniest and at his wittiest. This movie is also good because Shane Black is really good at making it so the action fight scenes in the movie actually go along with the story instead of just being there because it's a superhero movie. And I don't really mind the other fights just because they're a superhero movie. But this is definitely more realistic, and it's great this way it is. And this movie has sort of a darker tone to it because of all the terrorist threats and stuff. And I like that, and because it gives this movie a distinct identity, I think. But this movie's also very lighthearted, and it's one of the funniest movies in the MCU, in my opinion. Like, you have this one, I think if you were going to choose three to be the funniest, Thor Ragnarok, Guardians of the Galaxy, and this one. Definitely those three. And obviously, like a lot of MCU movies, the score in this movie is pretty good. Like, there's not a lot of music in this movie. It kind of just plays the same one over and over again. But at least that one theme is really good, so, yeah. And the CGI in this movie is obviously great, you know, the suit looks great, stuff like that. But I think that the effects for Extremis look really unique and solid. Like, it just looks like they're burning up from the inside. And especially in the final battle with Killian, he has like these tattoos on his chest, and it looks really cool with his chest lighting up with like fire and stuff as well. It looks really cool. Although this movie doesn't really connect to all of the other MCU movies that much. I feel like if this movie didn't happen, then nothing would have really been lost. Now, I love this movie, but it doesn't really do anything in the whole MCU story, besides the PTSD stuff I was talking about, and how later in the movie, Tony decides that he isn't going to distract himself with Iron Man anymore, and it's just going to be more of a side hobby, I guess. He chooses Pepper over making all his suits, basically. And it's a great example of that is how he finally takes his arc reactor out of his chest at the end of the movie, so that and he takes all the shrapnel out of his chest so that he can just be like normal again. But he can still be Iron Man, luckily. Something else that I like about this movie is that this movie kind of feels like a detective movie. I mean, at first, at least. But I actually really like that. Yeah. That's just a little side thing, I guess. I just like how it feels like that. There is definitely some iffy parts of the movie, unfortunately. Like, obviously everybody doesn't like the Mandarin twist, how they take this villain from the comics and they turn him into like this doofus actor. But I didn't think it was that bad. It was kind of a funny surprise. And also, people really can't complain that much because they're in a one shot that came with the movie. They show that there's actually a real Mandarin, so maybe we'll get him someday. He might come in an Avengers film or something, because apparently he's really powerful in the comics. I don't know. And also, there's a connection to the 10 Rings, which is kind of cool. And I never really noticed that when I looked back at, when I was watching Iron Man 1 for this marathon, I saw the symbol and I was like, wait, isn't that the Mandarin symbol? But then I was like, wait, no, Mandarin took these people's symbol, the 10 Rings logo. So that's kind of a nice reference. There is a couple of new characters and a couple of expanded characters, like a lot of movies in the MCU. I actually really like Happy in this movie, Happy Hogan. He was barely in the first two Iron Man movies, but in this movie he's actually he's kind of important. He's the forehead of security. And he seems like kind of an important character, actually, because he's the one that tells Tony, he leads Tony to the extremis, quest, I guess. To go find them. And he gives him a motivation to go after them, and it's personal reasons, so that's kind of cool. And when I think of Happy, just like Tony Stark, when I think of Happy, I think of him in this movie, and I think of him in Homecoming, because that's where he's at in his definitive form, I think. And I think that the villain, Killian, is actually pretty good. He's kind of just like Syndrome from, The Incredibles. But, I mean, that's a pretty decent villain format, so, I don't really mind it that much. And also, it's not like they were trying to surprise you or anything, because they basically hint at it. No, they pretty much outright say it, 40 minutes into the movie, so it's not that big of a surprise. It's not like Disney films where they reveal the twist villain at, the last minute. Well, I guess this is a Disney movie, but, whatever. You know what I mean? Something I like about AIM as well, it's not something I like about them. I just like AIM, and I think that they could have been in the MCU a lot more. They could have been like Hydra, where they just keep coming back with new stuff to do. Because in the comics, one of the comics I read, they create MODOK and they create Abomination. So they could have been in it a lot more, I think. And the last thing about this movie that I'm going to talk about is Tony's PTSD, because that is just a really neat addition that I guess it adds some like emotion as you kind of feel for Tony, because he's been through a lot after the Avengers, and it really starts to show a change in his character. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about Iron Man 3. And if I was going to give this movie a score, I would give it a 4.5 out of 5. Reason I'm not giving it like a perfect score is because I have a couple problems with the movie. Like, there's this one scene where, for some reason, Tony does not let Pepper leave the mansion, even though she knows that they're gonna get blown up by a terrorist. He just doesn't let her leave the house. But I mean, I'm not mad about him telling his address to the terrorist, because that, it fits his character. He's just a very risky person and stuff, so yeah. You've seen that in Iron Man 2 as well. And pretty much all of the movies. So yeah, if you guys liked my review, then maybe subscribe and leave a like. That'd be pretty epic. So yeah, tomorrow we move on to Thor: The Dark World, the one everyone hates, but we'll see what I think of it tomorrow. Bye, guys.